Hey there, it's me. I am here to answer an Ask Mama Cassie question. This is a new part of my blog. It's going to be in the about me section and probably in whatever section it goes with as well. There will be an article that goes with this. And with this particular one, I'm going to create a printable because it'll really help you. So, this is what we're talking about today. This is the question I get asked all the time during isolation. How in the world do you cook meals for your family every single day? So I work at home. My husband works at home. We've been doing that for years. We both own businesses and we have raised 5 children. I am a pretty fanatical person about healthy food, so I don't eat a lot of packaged food. And most of my family doesn't eat packaged food, so I cook, which means we all eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at home. And that's not unusual for us, but I see a lot of you right now are being forced to do that and you're really struggling. And that makes sense because when I first started doing this, I was basically just making dinners. And that's a lot easier than all of a sudden cooking all the meals. So I want to share some of my very best tips and very best hacks for cooking all this food at home to make it easier for all of you. Because I know some of you have kids, you're homeschooling, you're working, you're taking care of your houses, and now you're grocery shopping and you're cooking nonstop. And I see the person who asked this question of me actually said that they're spending over 4 hours a day in their kitchen. And I'm just going to tell you that that's completely unacceptable. I love to cook. Maybe I'll cook something really fancy that takes me an hour or two, but in general, for all 3 meals combined, I'm spending an hour or less in my kitchen, and I think you all want that too. So we're going to talk about that today. We are actually in my kitchen. You can take a look there, and you can see that I have, sorry, I hope you're not getting motion sick, a pretty well-equipped kitchen. It's an open floor plan in this house. I'm actually up north, and I've gotten asked about this a lot too. I live in Michigan. I have a place up north. I'm going to set you here so I can show you some things. I have a place up north. I have been here for over a month, and I have not personally left my house in over a month at all to go anywhere at all. So I have actually been on full quarantine. I'm not in any way, I haven't come in contact with anyone I know who is sick, but my husband does the grocery shopping every week to 10 days. He started doing that when we started having the virus, and I think it helps him. I think he feels better to help our family and to do something. So he does that. My husband, I should tell you, he cooks twice a week, dinners twice a week. We just started that when we ramped up this new business because it's so time consuming. Men can cook, just putting that out there. They can follow recipes. They can put things into the crock pot. They can cook just as much as you can cook. So I highly recommend you hit up my other post, which is about staying healthy and well during COVID, and get your household responsibility tracker and start divvying up some of these responsibilities. It's one of the first things I'm going to tell you about getting yourself out of the kitchen is share the load. So no ordering out right now or minimal ordering out right now, but if your husband can't throw some hot dogs on the barbecue grill, I just don't even know what to say about that. So if you have a significant other, if you have a roommate, if you have a housemate, you should be sharing this workload. That's my start. Now, when you make your grocery list, we're going to start all the way here. When you make your grocery list, you should already have a meal plan and know exactly what you're making. You should use recipes to create that or some kind of idea as to what you like to cook. So for breakfast, you should try to keep it as simple as possible. Breakfast and lunch, simple as possible. Consider redoing the same meal. So that is a common thing in our house. We all eat different food for breakfast. I have some pretty significant food sensitivities and allergies, so I have a more restricted diet. Everybody in my house eats on my plan for dinner. Now, if I'm making stew or something and my son and my husband want rolls, that's fine, but there's not going to be anything made in my house with gluten or dairy for dinner because I'm allergic. So I don't make separate meals for everybody. I never have. Again, I'm going to go back to this and tell you again, I have 5 children. I have never made separate meals. The key to not making separate meals is that your significant other is on board with you and that you realize that your children will eat if they're hungry. They are not going to starve themselves to death. Aside from the possibility that you have a child with a sensory integration disorder or autism or something that needs to be accommodated from a special needs perspective, the average kid will eventually eat most things. We have a rule in my house that if it makes anybody gag, we don't eat it. So my oldest son has a serious problem with meatloaf, and for like 15 years, we didn't have meatloaf when he was going to be home for dinner because it literally makes him gag. So, that's reasonable. But the pickiness of like, I just don't feel like eating that is not a thing. If you're doing that and accommodating that, you'll continue to do it and accommodate it, and you'll spend a lot of time in your kitchen. So help if you get the family involved in picking recipes and everybody helps you pick recipes and make a meal plan. That's optimal, because then you get a nice rotation of people's favorite foods. Everyone in my house loves tacos and loves spaghetti. Yay, because they're super easy. I don't do pasta more than once a week in my house. So if we do spaghetti, then maybe the next week we'll do like chicken piccata or something like that, which also is super easy. When you're looking for a recipe, the number one thing that matters is how much stuff do you have to cut. So a lot of times people don't talk about this. How much stuff do you have to cut? So it does not matter if you need chicken. Does not matter if you need spices. If you have a grocery store that sells those little bags of spices, that's perfect. If you don't, you might want to minimize based on spices. But you need to watch. You need to cut a bell pepper. You need to cut an onion. You need to cut broccoli. You need to cut. So that's an issue. When you are looking at recipes like that, you need to be conscientious about how much of that you can prep in advance. So that said, I'm going to share my first tip with you. This product right here, it's called minced garlic. You get it in the produce section. It's in a jar. It's already cut up. And anytime, I use a lot of garlic in my cooking. Anytime that you want to use garlic, you take the lid off, you scoop some out, and you are done. So I also do use fresh garlic. I have a garlic press. It's not easy to clean. It's not easy to skin garlic. It's just a lot more work. So if I'm really in a hurry, I'll use the minced garlic, or if I'm making something, for example, where it's going more in a sauce and I'm not as concerned about the flavor, I use the minced garlic. So that's that. You can also buy chopped frozen onions, and I recommend that you do. Anything that you're cooking onions into, most of the time you can use chopped frozen onions. You can use them in chilies, in soups, in stir fries even, and they taste the same, and it saves you a lot of headache cutting onions. If you are anything like me, onion cutting is the worst job in your house. Like, I cry, I can't see. I thought that having glasses would make this better. It does not. It does not help at all. So I always go for frozen chopped onions. If I really need fresh onions, that's always a job for my husband. I'll just drag him in the kitchen to cut the onions, because he does not get bothered by it at all. I don't even know how. So the other tool I'm going to recommend is this one. So this is a mandolin. This is a very simple mandolin. I think I paid like $12 for this at like Kroger, like the grocery store. It was in the aisle with the tools. You know how they have that little half aisle usually by the foil pans, and it has like whisks or maybe big spoons or odds and ends, things that you might need. It was there. It cuts thin slices and thick slices. That's it. But you would be surprised at how many things you can just cut with thin little slices and be done with. Like, you would really be surprised. Get yourself a good vegetable peeler. If you're using a knife to peel vegetables, whoa. Get a good vegetable peeler, a mandolin, frozen onions, pre-chopped garlic. That right there is going to take at least 20 minutes off of your cooking. This is another gadget I love, so I'm telling you about it. This is a knife sharpener. If you are cutting your vegetables with really dull knives, it's going to take you forever. It's going to be frustrating. If you go to cut a tomato and your tomato squishes down instead of cutting, your knives are too dull. So this is not for a serrated blade. This is only for a straight blade knife. And you need like a paring knife and then a big knife, and that's basically it. But because I use mandolins and I use really sharp knives, I also use a cutting glove. I got this off of Amazon. You can get them in a lot of different places, but they're basically cut proof. Like, I mean, I wouldn't take like a cleaver to it or something, but If you're chopping away, it's not going to chop through, and that is going to save you a lot of accidents, which is a big deal right now. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to actually show you the kinds of knives that I really recommend you have. So you need a knife like this. Okay, nice big knife. It can be that kind, or this is another one that people really like. This one works too, but you need a larger knife. And then you also need a little paring knife, okay? A paring knife, just so we're clear, is not the same as a steak knife. This is a steak knife, so I will hold them up so you can see them together. See? It's a big difference when you're trying to cut or peel or de-seed peppers or things like that, that you have a knife that is shorter, that the blade is shorter. It's safer for you, and you're gonna get a better cut. So that is the deal with knives. Now, every single thing that you want to cook can be prepped except for soft vegetables. If you cut cucumbers or bell peppers ahead of time, they're going to turn mushy. So if you're not going to use them in the next day or two, don't do that. Same thing with, it's going to be the same exact thing with tomatoes. So tomatoes you really don't want to cut in advance either. Then if you have broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, almost any other vegetable, you can cut it ahead of time. The best thing to wash your vegetables with is just throw some water and a little bit of vinegar into your sink and put your veggies in there. It's quick, it's easy. You just get it out, you give it a good rinse. I mean, for real, if you fill your sink almost with water, like 2 gallons of water, like a cup of vinegar is plenty or less, it's totally fine. But that actually helps to get rid of any waxy covers or anything like that on your vegetables. So that's important. And even if you use organic produce, you do need to wash it. I know that there's a lot of debate about that. Organic means that they use natural pesticides and natural fertilizers. It doesn't mean that they use none. Some of those things could be a problem, or you could be sensitive to them, so you should wash them. Frozen vegetables at this time of year are probably more nutrient dense than fresh vegetables, right? So I'm going to say that again. Frozen vegetables at this time of year are probably more nutrient dense than fresh vegetables. The reason is that they are flash frozen on site. So they're picked when they're ripe, flash frozen, and then shipped to you. Rather than being picked before they're ripe and before they're fully nutrient dense, shipped, and then sprayed with something to make them ripen quickly. So if you think about that, it gives you a lot of leeway as far as produce to buy frozen. I love to buy frozen berries. I make smoothies out of them. You can actually freeze most of your vegetables. I'm shocked like crazy at how many vegetables and how much produce is available at stores. Go get it. You will be able to cook it. You will be able to use it. It stays good in your fridge for a decent amount of time. And most of it you can put in a Ziploc bag in the freezer or in a container in the freezer. And it's going to be great. You can pre-cook chicken. I would recommend if you bake it, season it however you want, pre-cook it for 15 minutes, and then when you warm it again, it'll cook the rest of the way. If you're cooking it all the way to done because you're going to use it for salads or something and you're not going to warm it, then you want to make sure that you cook it for 20 to 25 minutes. You want to cook it long enough for it to be fully done. But if it's not fully done because you're going to heat it up later in the week for dinner, that's fine. You can pre-brown meat, and you can pre-make anything that's going in a crock pot. And so anything you're tossing into a crock pot, you can set that up and pre-make it and then throw it in your fridge. My favorite way to load up for a crock pot or for a marinade, because I'm into like marinades with, we're grilling a little now, is I use like a big vase. So this is my vase. And then you set your bag inside, and I will show you. Once your bag's inside, you just flip it over like that, and then it holds it open for you. It holds your bag open. That's like the best hack ever. So you can toss whatever you want in there, whatever goes in the crock pot meal. Then you just flip this, you close it, yank it out, and shove it in your fridge or your freezer or whatever. This is like a really, really good way to do this. You can set up a few of them on your counter so you can cut all of one thing at a time. You cut all of your broccoli and put it in all your different things. You get all your chicken ready and put it in all your different things. Just remember that if your marinade has any kind of citrus in it, you cannot marinate chicken for more than 4 hours. It'll start to get funky, y'all, funky. You can also do that little trick with the Ziploc bag over a cup if you wanted to use like a quart size or a smaller size, like a sandwich bag. You can do that over like just a drinking cup as well. So that is an awesome way to deal with that. Now, this is the thing that nobody wants to hear, but everybody needs to know. You must clean as you go. When you're done with things, you need to shove them in your dishwasher or in a sink with some water in it, because if your kitchen gets trashed, it's going to be very hard to keep track of what you're doing. It's going to be very, very difficult to get it done, and you're going to have a lot more waste and a lot more issues. So you want to clean as you go. For teaspoons and tablespoons, if you are not using something wet, so if you're doing spices, it's easy. You can just wipe them out with a clean towel or a clean paper towel and use it again. You do not have to wash it in between every use on spices. You will go crazy. Don't do that. So that is a big deal. What you want to do is make sure that anything that you're using just gets shoved in the dishwasher as soon as possible. If you meal prep, it's the best thing because you clean one time. So you clean as you go, then you clean at the end, and when you go to make your meals throughout the week, it's a lot easier. When you do breakfast with meal prep, cooking hard-boiled eggs ahead of time is everything. So if you can cook hard-boiled eggs, if you can make jar oatmeal mixes, things like that, that is the best thing possible for breakfast. I like to have fried eggs every morning. I'm just like that, or a smoothie every morning, and I just make that as I go. It only takes like 10 minutes. But if you are doing things like hard-boiled eggs, go ahead and make those ahead of time. If your family loves them, they're great. You can chop them up and you can make egg salad out of them for lunches. You can do all kinds of things. So I would recommend hard-boiling a dozen eggs every week. It just makes a lot of sense as long as your family eats eggs. And then the other thing that you want to think about is making bigger dinners and using dinner leftovers for lunch. So in our household, we plan at least 2 to 3 dinners a week that make lunch. Usually one of those dinners is a soup. It's like last week we did ham and bean soup. The week before we did chili. We also have done a variety of different types of soups. My husband's kind of funny about soup for dinner. He likes something more hearty, and I get that. I'm fine. So we do like a stew or a bean soup or a chili or something like that. It just kind of sticks with you better, and at this time of year, it's like such a nice comfort food. So I love to throw a roast in the crock pot, and I always make extra roast, and then I cut it up and I make stew out of it like 2 days later, and then we also have it for lunch. So reusing the same meals, there is nothing wrong with that. So I'm going to show you now my very favorite spice combo. It's kind of a secret. Like nobody who comes to my house, everybody comes to my house, they eat, they love it, like they're super into my cooking, but very few people know this. So I'm just telling you. This is my secret weapon spice combination. Ready? Garlic powder. I'm sure you're not surprised because I just told you how much I love garlic. Italian seasoning. Believe it or not, they only had this size jar, you guys. Like, I mean, I'm going to need more than that. And Lowry's. Okay? If you put garlic powder, Italian seasoning, and Lowry's on basically anything, and I do mean that, like particularly chicken and vegetables, any kind of vegetables, and you bake it in the oven with a little bit of avocado oil or whatever kind of oil you like to cook with, you will not believe how delicious it is. And that leads me to another thing, which is tray bakes. So quick and easy way to make dinner is to cut everything up, obviously, in your meal prep, shove everything on one baking sheet, put a little bit of olive or avocado oil. I always recommend cooking with avocado oil instead of olive oil, but whichever you have, put it on there, sprinkle some seasoning on it, toss it in the oven for 20 minutes, and you have dinner. You can do the same thing with a skillet on the stove. It is amazing. You can get those. You can even get like those jars of Asian sauces. I tend to make a lot of my own, but you can buy them pre-made, dump them in there, and then you have a great stir fry. So I hope that that is helpful. On the blog, I'm going to talk more about how to actually pick a great recipe that works for your family and in your timeline. how to time out recipes, because I'm sure that you've all noticed by now that those recipes that say 30 minutes or less do not take 30 minutes or less. And I'm also going to create a conversion chart for you to put on the inside of your cupboard to make it really easy to scale recipes up or down. And I'm going to talk more about how to actually read and interpret a recipe. You know, what does it mean when they say fold that in? What's the difference between a capital T and a lowercase t? Some of it will be very basic, and some of you already know this stuff, but for some of us just starting out who maybe don't have family who cooks, these details are really challenging to get around. So I'm going to cover that on the blog in detail. I'm going to talk a lot about this too, but I figure, hey, why not make a video and a blog post, and then you guys can look at it and take it in however you like better. So that is Ask Mama Cassie for today. I appreciate your questions. I will be coming out with a new Ask Mama Cassie probably every other week on Thursdays is looking like the schedule right now as I'm hammering this out. We'll see how much everybody likes it. If y'all like it, I might do it more. If you're not as into it, I might do it less. But it's all about you, what you want, what you need, and what helps you. So I hope that that helps make your quarantine life easier, your cooking life easier. I hope that it gives you a ton more time, and I hope that it helps you get a lot more healthy food into your diet. You are setting a habit right now that will ensure your health and your children's health for years to come. Learning this guarantees your health for years to come. It's worth it. It's so worth it. It's worth every minute of it. So I hope that you will check it out and share it with your friends, and, you know, subscribe, because I think this is going to be YouTube. Subscribe and hit up the blog. So I will talk to you all soon. Bye.